Okay. Hey, Sinora. Hi. How are you doing today?
Hey, Jatin. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, looks like you had a lot of coaching to give.
I know, things are just going on like that. But
Yeah.
whom do we have today? Who's our guest for today?
Well, we have Ritu Raj today, and Ritu Raj is here from Pune.
Oh, wow. So, कसा
Yeah.
आहे ऋतुराज तुम्ही?
Hi to both of you. मस्त चाललेलं आहे. Being a Punekar since last almost 10 plus years, I feel very fortunate to be associated with Pune, which is considered to be as uh, like the city which provides all the facilities of education. It's known for a hub of education in India. तर
Mhm.
मस्त आहे पुणे. पुणे तिथे काय उणे. There is nothing which is like you will find everything in Pune. That's what the quote says.
Correct,
That's
correct. I know.
And what
माझ्या
language is that?
this is
that was
Marathi now we are
Marathi.
speaking.
Yeah,
Ooh,
this is Marathi.
nice.
नाही, माझी आई पुणेतून आहे. So of
अच्छा.
course ते मराठी नाही.
Uh-huh.
But then I do like, of course, being in Canada for so long is like my Marathi has gone slightly rusted now. Okay, so but little bit I
मी
like the
शिकवेन.
conversation is there. Yeah,
मी
definitely,
शिकवेन
definitely.
आणि आणि आपण थोडंफार बोलू म्हणजे तुम्हाला रिवाइज होईल.
ठीक आहे. चलो एक ट्राय करूया.
चालेल चालेल.
Looks like I'll be learning Marathi very soon. I'll be able
Yeah,
to
We'll teach you.
speak fluent Marathi in like very soon.
yeah. I
Yeah.
know, Sinora. Like even last when we spoke with another guest, it was in Marathi again, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
and still I couldn't recognize it. I think next time I'm definitely gonna recognize it, and the very next time I'm gonna speak too. So
good, good,
Good,
good. That would
good,
be
good,
fun.
good.
yeah, but welcome, Rituraj. So just to tell everyone about our all our listeners about you today. So you are currently with Tetra Pak as an agile coach, and you have 11 years of experience. And I want you to give your a brief about your introduction. What did you do? But just to tell all our listeners that you have two patents and you have a book written by you. You do conferences, speaker, and yeah, so many things. So I think I'll give the stage to you to talk more about yourself.
Sure, thanks, Sinora. So, yeah, to talk about myself, I'm Rituraj. I have done my engineering in my hometown, which is Kolhapur, which is like um a midpoint in between Pune and Bangalore, the two IT cities, major IT cities in India. And then since last 10, 11 years, I'm here in Pune, worked with multiple MNCs, and right now I'm working as an agile coach slash scrum master slash safe release train engineer at Tetra Pak. And when it comes to my interests, it's all about agile ways of working and exploring the Industry 4.0 specific technology stacks and delivering the agile products around those technologies like cloud, Internet of Things, IoT, AI, ML, data science, data analytics, RPA, QA, DevOps, SecOps, etc. And recently, I have published my book. The name of the book is Mastering Advanced Scrum.
Mhm.
I've been acting as a speaker at various global conferences and even at educational institutes, including IITs and IIMs. I'm holding two innovation patents, which are majorly into the area of IoT and Industry 4.0 related initiatives, where I did some R&D with the other fellow researchers. And I'm been into this agile product development, delivery, ways of working, DevOps, and everything, as all these things go hand in hand since last 11 years. And I started my career as a software developer. Then I moved into SDET role. Then I got an exposure into cloud IoT. And since last 4 to 5 years, I have uh, been exploring various agile frameworks. And as we all agree to this fact that it's all about agile values and principles, right? Just instead of doing agile, we need to be agile, and then going back to those 4 values and 12 principles, we always need to keep our focus on those things rather than just picking any framework and then applying to the teams, agile teams. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. I could summarize quickly.
Nice, very good. So, how did you come upon Agile first of all? Like, what attracted you towards Agile, or how did you come across Agile, and then you started your journey on it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and there was an interesting story behind it. Like when I was working with ADP back in 2015, our team was searching for a person who could do the things in terms of the roles and responsibilities, accountabilities which are required to be carried out by a Scrum Master. So in our product development team, there was no one who was ready to take up that responsibility. I just took it as a challenge. And then initially I struggled a bit because I was completely new to this agile thing and even to the Scrum framework. Being a part of the agile product development team there in that particular setup, I was knowing a little bit about how the framework is all about and then which all things are associated with it. But then as a Scrum Master, that was the first time when I got an exposure to the Scrum framework and then the ways of doing the things using agile mindset and everything. And then slowly my interest got developed. Then I got a chance to do some trainings, and I also did some certifications, read many books, many blogs. So right from Mike Cohen and Gunther and even I keep on discussing with these big names through LinkedIn or through other social medias because they are like agile gurus. They have lived agile in their lives, and then that's how the interest got developed. And I explored few things here and there. The way I got the opportunities also, touch wood. I think I should say this that I got really good opportunities wherever I've worked so far, and then currently I'm working as a Scrum Master for 3 Scrum teams as well as a Safe RT at a program level where we are a part of an agile release train, and then it's a big setup where we are um, running some initiatives in the digital automation components industry 4.0 specific initiatives. But then literally you can say it like I'm an accidental Scrum Master at the start, and then slowly read many things, listened to many folks, and then did some self learning also, and then that's how the journey happened so far.
Yeah, I think we all are accidental. Not, I don't know about all because Jatin is again like he's from era where this all started. I think from Mycon and all of those guys. But
Yeah.
for me also, it happened so suddenly and accidentally. And
Mhm.
once it happened, I could never leave it. Like, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can totally echo what you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
My accident would be that I had an on-site offshore client, right? So that's what forced me to move into, but it was, of course, we are talking 2002. That's the
See, I
time,
told you.
right? That's the time we started working with Extreme Programming XP with an
Yeah.
on-site offshore model. So we had to, of course,
Mhm.
do that handshake every day. And of course, with Extreme Programming, you're directly jumping as one of the frameworks which was earlier used for Agile.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what kind of challenges you face? You mentioned, Rituraj, okay, you face a lot of challenges. So while working and while implementing, like because you worked Tetra Pak, not only Tetra Pak, but I know Tetra Pak is quite a huge company out there,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of products as well.
Yeah.
But when you started your Agile journey, you mentioned about the challenges, right?
Mhm.
So your
Mhm.
personal challenges as well as challenges while in the organization.
Yeah. There are many challenges, but then the key challenge is all about agile mindset,
Mm.
where that is the prime thing where people struggle a lot, and sometimes the things because things have been done that way only, the status quo part of it, right? We are doing this thing, and then uh, we don't want to try out any new approaches when it comes to our way of working, right? That's the thing which we keep on hearing from the developers or even from the stakeholders or the senior management sometimes. The typical top level management is always been waterfallish, right? And it's not wrong, because at the end of the day, some business sponsor is putting some budget, and at the end of the day it's a serious business. We are working on some products, and then they are always looking up to the return on investments, right? um, but at the same time, I think if we sell out that idea by experimenting the things and then keeping on exploring the things with the set of teams, and then if we can really prove the value of why agile seems to be a good fit as compared to the water polish way of working, as well as not just for the sake of doing the process, we are not doing it right. um, I think it takes significant amount of time to probably um live up to the expectations from the senior management as well as stakeholders, and to find the right balance in between the engineering and business side, right? So I think the role of a product owner or the person who is acting as a mediator in between the engineering and business team, um, that person has to be a thorough agilist first. From process point of view, I think scrum masters, agile coaches are always going to be there to challenge the status quo, to have that kind of a foresight, to have that kind of a persuasion, to bring that sense of agile community driven sharing of best practices kind of thing, like all the qualities of servant leadership basically. um, and then things won't change within a day or two, right? So leadership buy-in, agile mindset, then understanding the thorough agility, exploring new things, and then sense making, systems thinking. I think these are the few things where I could see that teams struggle a lot. And basically, the moment you utter this word in front of them, like we are doing it using this particular framework or that particular framework, typically those folks who are like technology geeks, or those folks who are like core developers, they always go with the technology angle of agility. So technical agility is always going to be the core of any form of agility, that's for sure. And that's the reason I think XP or any such framework which has its core in technical agility, I think we won't get to see that kind of a hindrance or that kind of a friction when we propose any such frameworks to them. But when it comes to other frameworks like Scrum or Kanban, just for the sake of process driven approach, we could see that kind of a friction. So instead of saying those words, I think indirectly, if we can challenge the status quo and then address the need of continuous learning, continuous improvement, and trying out the innovation, experimentation way of doing it, failing fast, failing safe, learn, unlearn, relearn. I think that certainly works. And then I have tried so many times, and then I could see that these things certainly make a difference. There are challenges, but then at the end of the day, we all need to work upon the best of the bestest ideas. I could say, and then it's not always like the duty of a scrum master or an agile coach. That brainstorming needs to happen within the team, and then even if a fresh graduate is providing an idea to skip any of the things which are not adding any value in terms of wherever it is applicable, be it a process, be it a people point of view, be it a product point of view, that voice needs to be heard. And inspection part is done, adaptation is all what we need to do on a continuous improvement basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched upon a lot of good points here, Rituraj, like a lot of things that we usually talk about a lot, but when it comes to implementation, we all create our own version of, processes and things for
Right.
the team initially, and then how we take them gradually from where they are in the initial phase to the final phase, or not even the final phase, like to the journey. It takes a lot of challenging the status quo and going over, like reiterating the processes also, because you can't just go in with the scrum book and say, hey, this is what it is, you have to
Right.
follow from the very next day and that's it. Like, I don't care how
Right.
you do it, you can't just do that. We
Right.
also iteratively like, do increment of our process in terms of introducing new stuff or creating that muscle memory for the people to start, adapting to these cadences or getting used to this meeting and not taking meeting like, oh, there's so many meetings and stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah, definitely inspection, adaptation, all these things, they really play a key role in how our journey has been in all this while.
Yeah.
So what about, I actually wanted to ask you about culture. So how does culture play part in all of this? Like, the organization culture. I see you've worked with Cognizant, you've worked with ADP, you're with Tetra Pak now. How has culture helped you or caused hindrance for you in this process?
Mhm. Uh, the good thing about my career journey so far, while being into this role, is that I never got a chance to work with a co-located Scrum team or an Agile team. I have always worked with the globally distributed teams, right from 2015, almost 5 to 6 years. So even though in this Corona pandemic times, people were struggling to get themselves acquainted with the remote ways of working thing, I felt like I'm fortunate and lucky enough to go, to say it like I already got that kind of an exposure in past, and then I could make use of certain things to make things better in a better shape. But then I think culture, definitely it has um, a significant amount of role which needs to be played, because culture can't be built within a year or so, and then it's always like combination of top down and bottom up approach, right? Your organization always has a vision, strategy, which gets converted into the portfolios and programs, and then the projects and products, everything, right? So the things get percolated from top to down, but at the end of the day, it's like the ground level folks, the teams who are going to work upon those things to achieve those roadmaps, which will support your org level objectives or program level objectives one level up. So to have that kind of culture from an organization's point of view, it is really required to have a proper understanding and handshake in between top down and bottom up. So that is the organizational point of view. When it comes to the learning part of it, I think the culture of innovation, experimentation, continuous learning, that also plays an important role, because at the end of the day, I was reading one of the reports from Gartner or IDC where they mentioned that every 56th day a new technology is getting introduced. So gone are the days where we are spending too much of time into the manual deployment of a code or manual testing, right? So nowadays it is like companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they are deploying to the production every single day multiple times, right? So that's the importance of DevOps and DevOps way of working, which goes hand in hand with Agile. So uh, at the end of the day, individuals who are going to contribute as a part of those Agile teams, they need to understand that on one side they are getting an exposure to learn new things on a daily basis, and then on the other side, from the stakeholders or top level management point of view, they also need to have a look at knowledge as a service model. You might have heard about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. So there is one more new buzzword which is coming. They call it as knowledge as a service.
So
So
what is
there was a
that?
yeah. So last year only, I think it was Salesforce and Tech Mahindra. They spent around millions of dollars to revamp their learning process for their associates. They train their associates in the cutting edge technologies like AI, ML, and everything. And that's the need of the time, right? Because new technologies will keep on coming, and then the teams need to adapt to those technologies. um, uh, uh, the thing is that when it comes to the learning part of it, learning plays an important role when it comes to the overall cultural aspect of things which are being done into an organization. And innovation, experimentation is also one more important thing, where um, innovation is something where people understand the problems from and customers end, not only the product owners or product managers bringing up those problems, but uh, literally developers understanding the pain points from the customers end, and then they are proposing something. So when it comes to OKRs, we always say that it's not only the product owners, each and every person who is a part of a scrum team, they need to put themselves into the shoes of a product owner, and they need to come up with the problems which can be converted into the objectives which can be worked upon. And then we need to have some measurables, measurements, using which we can convert those objectives and then key results, and then we can work upon those customer pain points and then make a change. Right, at the end of the day, it's all about value delivery. And then uh, when it comes to the lean agile way of working, eliminating the waste and adding more value, eliminating the waste and adding more value. So uh, learning new things also acts as one of the aspects when it comes to adding new value, because if they do a simple CI/CD pipeline implementation, the cadence of 3 weeks of sprint can be reduced to 2 weeks, can be further reduced to 1 week, right? Because they are saving their effort, time, also the cost. So the waterfallish way of iron triangle, that triangle cost, quality, scope, right? That is also
Right.
getting addressed
Yeah.
indirectly. Culture is the most important thing, and then along with the culture, mindset is also one more thing which drives that culture, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, nice. You touch base on OKR. Like
Uh-huh.
like how was your experience been using Scrum and OKR together? Like because that's what people might have thought that, oh, OKR is separate and Scrum or Agile is separate. But then people tend to forget that you can have OKR as part of your sprint, and you can have
Mhm.
uh, not only that, you can individually have your OKRs plus get it incorporated during while running your sprints or while running your whether it's Scrum or whether it's Kanban.
Yeah. So it's a simple goal setting framework.
Mm.
It has nothing to deal with Scrum way of working or Kanban way of working. Even you can define your personal set of OKRs for a period of a quarter, or for a period of 6 months or 1 year, and then you can uh, so as to give you a literal simple kind of an OKR definition, you want to be a fit and fine person by the end of this year, and then you define it like, I need to be fit and fine by the end of this year, and then that is your objective, which is a simple, measurable, realistic, flexible, achievable. Okay, so those are the key characteristics when we define any kind of an objective. The corresponding key results would be like, my body mass index in the next 3 months needs to be into this particular limit. My hip to waist ratio needs to be this. Currently it is at this position, and I'm expecting it to be at that position by the end of next month or something. So you have your current positioning and your future idealistic progression based measure where you need to see yourself. So that is nothing but one of the key results, and then you define the key results. This particular approach helps you to set your focus. It creates an engagement, and then sometimes you need to stretch a bit, you need to be committed. So if you can correlate all of this, a simple example, to your product development team, or even to the service delivery team where you have product is already gone live, and then you want to ensure that your system is up and running 24 by 7. You might have heard about this Facebook, Instagram, which was I think down for almost half a day couple of months back,
Yeah.
right? So if we would like to improve upon our mean time to repair kind of a metric, where we always need to ensure that our systems are up and running 24 by 7, and even if anything goes down, even if a simple microservice goes down, within fraction of seconds we should recover it. Lowest mean time to repair or mean time to restore. So we can set it as an OKR for a service delivery team, or let's suppose if it is a product development team, uh, probably we would like to ensure that our code deployment time is getting reduced from these many hours to these many hours. right? Um, I think the focus always needs to be on the outcome part of it. So there are two terms which we always talk about when it comes to OKRs. One is output and the other one is outcome. Output is nothing but the number of lines of codes which the developers have written, the number of features which we are shipping it to the production. So we can have all of that that acts as a base, but how much value it is giving to the end user or to the customers, that's what our interest always needs to be. So focusing on the outcomes and having some outcome based OKRs defined for a period of a quarter. And then in Tetra Pak, I think in last quarter, we started with the pilot implementation of OKRs. So out of that setup, we chose 3 to 4 agile teams, Scrum teams. And then we also did some learnings around it. I also did facilitated some workshops to give them the training about theoretical part of it. I also gave them some use cases as well as the real-time examples, like what could be the possible uh, type of scenarios where you can derive those OKRs. We ran some workshops, and then uh, they also got the meaning about why we are doing it, understanding the why aspect of it. And then when they literally got to know about the difference in between the output and outcome, I think they themselves understood that even if we release hundreds of features within a year, that is not going to make our product popular, or that is not going to increase the number of customers which are getting onboarded. At the end of the day, which feature is being used the most, and what is the real-time customer feedback which we are getting, that is the most important thing which we always need to consider. And then basically driving those OKRs will give us a power to generate those user stories. So OKRs literally act as a machine to generate those user stories, outcome based, customer value focused user stories. And that also helps the product manager, product owners to bridge the gaps in between the customer understanding and what engineering teams are doing. Literally, I can say that after the end of last quarter, we could achieve almost 80% of OKRs what we committed. And then there were lessons learned. Few teams struggle a bit because they thought it like they will be able to achieve everything, but they couldn't. But then I think over a period of next 6 months or 1 year, we will be uh, exploring this kind of goal setting framework, and then we will be experimenting it out with the other teams also, so that they can also share their experiences. But it is really a powerful framework, and when we combine it with EBM framework, which is another framework which is all about evidence based
Yes.
management framework, they too like uh, you can do some miracles, like you understand where your current positioning is and where you would like to go in a period of next 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And then if we combine OKRs with EBM, that's like a real miracle which we could see get going.
That's amazing. So I'm actually intrigued. How do you measure your OKR? Like, what are the agile best metrics that you like to see or like to have to actually measure your OKR or even your team hygiene and all of that?
Yeah. So frankly speaking, gone are the days when we are only measuring the burn downs and burn ups and
Mhm.
velocity, because those are again output based metrics.
Yeah.
So when I said about the outcome based metrics, it's all about those 4 key value areas which you could get to see under the EPM framework. So whether it is current value, unrealized value, time to market, or ability to innovate. There are 2 areas which are like outward facing, more of customer facing areas, and 2 are like more inward facing. So the way I said it, like let's take an example of red tape measurement. How many times within a sprint a developer keeps on waiting for the other developers or for someone to give an approval to do something,
Mhm.
right? If a particular person or a developer is waiting for an access permission for 2 days, literally you are wasting 2 days for someone else to give that access permission, right? So identifying how many red tapes are there because of which things are getting delayed, and then how we can reduce those red tapes. Okay.
Mhm.
The number of agile, I don't know whether number or percentage will make a good thing, suitable thing here, but then how your agile values are being enacted upon within your team, right? When it comes to the current value, probably you would like to have a look into the net promoter score or customer satisfaction CSAT score, where you are really asking them about which all features within a product are frequently used, which all features are not at all used, right? The number of user based sessions per month, the number of active users which are making use of a particular feature, right? So again, these kind of metrics which will be acting as a powerful source of a thought process or thought triggering process for your teams, where you can certainly look at the outcome and then see like whether it is ability to innovate, time to market, current value or unrealized value. Let's suppose we can have a brainstorming within the team, and for next couple of sprints let's focus upon ability to innovate. Yeah. Let's understand how we can prevent technical debt right from the beginning. If it is an existing team where we already have a technical debt, how we can ensure that we have a better restructuring, refactoring of our code, how we can improve our test coverage, how we can make use of automation to ensure that we are reducing the time required, effort required, cost and everything. So I think if you really look at those 4 key value areas from EBM framework, there are n number of metrics which you can think of belonging to each individual area, and then you can just experiment around it. At the end of the day, you will think that this particular area needs to be given more focus upon, or this is the particular metric which we would like to pick it up from that particular key value area. But at the end of the day, you will find it out like these things are perfectly working fine for us, but at least you will get to know that these are the things which are working fine for you. And then let's look at some other metrics. And then at the end of the day, product owner needs to be or the product manager needs to always understand that these are the metrics where your focus always needs to be, not on the velocity and everything. The story points can be inflated. We know like what are the consequences if we focus upon the output. More of an outcome based metrics, any metric which has got a significant focus on the outcome part of it, that I would like to have within my teams.
Yeah, and I think the metrics that can help stakeholders make better decisions, they're
Yeah.
always outcome-based metrics. So
Right.
output is just not the right way to look at the team or the team health and those kind of things. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
Because see, nowadays what has happened is because there are products out, we like all, not only we, meaning like everybody wants to see how is the product adoption, user adoption of your product, right? And what
Right.
is the user experience that people are getting while using your application or your
Mhm.
product or your product which is there. And of course, you need a lot of data that needs to be generated. So based on that data analysis, you can come and say that, okay, product owners, or this is the product, how do we improvise, where to improvise, assuming if you're having a customer churn out, then okay, how can you decrease those things, right?
Right.
And that definitely helps. I agree with you on that. And
Yeah.
of course, then based on that, you can come up with your customized matrix, how you want to display it and how you want to take it forward.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's
Mhm.
nice. I think so. EBM is the new thing which is already there now. Of
Mhm.
course, exploration, people are still in that state or experimenting it. But then I think I definitely agree with you that yeah, EBM would be one of the major players in coming in the near future. Where uh, you have seen something like it's an evident thing. It's like it's in front of you. Those are numbers which are there, which makes it more easier for people to understand and work on it.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's all about data driven decision making.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Summarize. Yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I think this has been some great information that you provided it, but I also wanted to hear something about your book. Like you wrote a book and what it is about, and if you want to tell our listeners, like, why should they read your book?
Okay, so book is the second thing. Probably I would like to ask both of you and to all the other folks who are going to watch this video afterwards. They should visit my LinkedIn profile, and I have written a LinkedIn article there, okay, which talks about how we are doing agile and not being agile. That too in a sarcastic way. You will definitely laugh a lot after reading that article. That article was highlighted somewhere with one of the publication houses in India. And then their editing team, they contacted me back in 2019. They told me that this is what they have read, and then they want me to write something for them. So I literally told them that writing a blog on an article versus writing a book which is of 300 400 pages, there's a, it's like North Pole and South Pole, right? Cannot.
Yeah.
And then I haven't tried it, like till that point of time I was not aware of this thing, like how much complex, complicated, chaotic thing it is to write a book. Like I don't know how these folks like Chetan Bhagat and Shobha Day and all those big authors, how they can write these wonderful books, amazing books. But it is, trust me, it is really a difficult, complex process. I literally spent around 1 year. So initially I took a step back. I told them that I will figure it out. I will send you an outline. They agreed to that. I sent them an outline. I sent them first 2 chapters, and then probably after that the outline remained altogether on a different direction, and then the book turned out to be altogether a different thing. And then it
That's how our
happens, I think.
agile journey is also like. When we enter the
Yeah,
project, we think of
Yeah.
different things. By the end of it, it's a different team altogether.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I think uh, the good thing about this thing is that the book is that I got a chance to read so many things. uh, so it acted like literally revising the concepts altogether. Sometimes it happens that you might have heard about this particular thing. uh, you might have heard about this swarming thing or liberating structures or gamification, right? But then sometimes over a period of time you get stuck with that particular project or a product, and then a development team, and then literally you forget about those tools. The book is all about those tools. The book is all about those techniques. The book is all about all those add-ons which you can have explored, applied, and then in an experimentation way of doing it, obviously. So if you look at the Scrum Guide, it tells you about the Scrum framework, right? What the framework is all about, what are the events, what are the roles, what are the artifacts, the values, and then the concept of empiricism. It won't tell you about how you would like to implement Scrum, right? And I think I was listening to one of the professional Scrum trainers, Nanda Lankalapalli in India. He said that intentionally the Scrum Guide has been kept like an open book. Okay, there are some gaps in the Scrum Guide, and then I think Ken Schwaber also mentioned this thing that those gaps are required because it's not a foolproof framework. It keeps on evolving. Literally now it's 13 pages of PDF, which they have reduced it to micro version of it. Initially it was not that much small, but then it keeps on evolving based upon the feedbacks which get shared over the globe, and then how the agile or Scrum practitioners are playing around with the framework and they are implementing their own ways of working. The core thing remains the same. The 5 Scrum values, empiricism, still remains the same. But the Scrum Guide won't tell you, like, it tells you the what part, it won't tell you how part, right? And then when it comes to the how part, there are n number of other things which you can explore, which you can apply, which you can ask your teams to have them experimented in their way of working. And the book is all about that. So over a period of last 5 to 6 years, whichever things which I have seen through the agile coaches, through the other Scrum masters, being a part of a agile community of practices or agile center of excellences, like the people are sharing their best practices, and then you get to know about so many things, like, okay, this is how it works, and then this probably might be a problem which I have seen so far in one of my previous projects, and I did something like this. But if I would have done like that, which someone else has done, it would have turned out to be altogether a different thing. So I've tried to capture all those things and then put in to that book so that you can apply those techniques and improve your events, improve the overall communication, collaboration, the structuring, the alignment, the roles, specific things. So those things are nothing but some additional set of add-ons or techniques which you can apply and then enhance your scrum based agile way of working. So book is all about that. And then I have literally put down some scenarios also, the conversations which are happening within the different team members, so that you can correlate to those things, like, yeah, this is happening in our organization also, this is happening with my team also, so you can easily correlate to those scenarios.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very good point, because normally when we are reading books, it's more concept based. So sometimes, I barely finish a book. I don't end to end read a book. I'll pick and choose the things, because these books, you like some chapters, you're fine with other chapters. But the scenario based, or the the communication based books, or where they are actually talking about real time scenario, you want to read it. Like, I was reading this book, Project Phoenix, and I just couldn't keep it. I was up till 4 a.m. in the night, and I was non-stop reading that book, and I just loved it. I think I'm
It's a
definitely
good book.
gonna read your book. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
like,
a good book. I know Phoenix.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you are part of that scenario now, so you want to know
Exactly.
what's going on next, and what is the next thing that's going to happen, or you're thinking 10 things in your mind. I could do this, but what is this guy gonna do? Like, so yeah, definitely those scenario based books, it's amazing to read, and it's really intriguing as well.
See, what has happened nowadays is people want to see practically how it was done. Can I
Yeah.
use it? So that becomes a mentoring part. But then how will it work for me? And will I be successful or not? Okay, that's only experiment. I can try and do it and see. But at least you are getting away that, oh, this was a situation. I have something similar. Okay, this works for me. Okay, let me see the solution, what he has done, and let me try it out. Right. And that's what people like. That's what people want. Like
Yeah.
whether it's for like, even if, like, as Rituraj you mentioned, see, agile, people think that agile is okay, just follow those principles and this principles and values and you're agile. But how do you do it?
Far
Agile
beyond.
is all customizable. It's not like, okay, what you follow is has to be somewhere. It has to be
Yeah.
the same. Like you might have heard about, like, there is a Spotify agile framework which is there, right? They have taken Scrum Agile and then they have customized as per their requirement. Similarly, I don't know if you have heard about Zombie Scrum. There are so many Scrums which are out there, right? So people have picked up the core and have done a good wrapper around it which suits their requirements. But people tend to forget, or organizations tend to forget that, okay, Scrum is like, okay, you go out in the market, buy it, and just use it the same way as it is. But that doesn't work, right? And when they fail, it's like, oh, Scrum doesn't work for me. Let's go the way we were doing our business, right? So that's what I definitely agree with Sonora. Like, okay, the Sonora based Sonora for situation based books and things, or Sonora based books and
Yeah,
things.
right. Now that's the new term, new
This
framework
is a
coming
new
in.
framework. Yeah,
Sonora-based framework. Okay,
definitely helps.
next book for you, Rituraj. You have to write
yeah
that one now.
yeah
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's pretty interesting. In fact, for me, being working in IT for almost 10 plus years, and now I kind of made a switch to marketing, and it's absolutely different from what I've been doing in IT so far. But we are using the same agile values and principles stays the same, but the whole framework has to be modified based on their needs, their requirements, and their campaigns. It's no more product development. It's campaign that we need to launch. So it's so much fun to do it. At the same time, there's so much thought process that goes into how you can evolve yourself from the ways that you were working to implementing new ways for them. So yeah, it's absolutely, it's fun. The agile best is the agility part of the agile world. It's the best part. Like, you can just go out and about and choose your horizons and do your things there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Sinora, you should
Uh-huh.
call it as marketing IT. Don't call it as IT is
Oh no,
different and you're my. So it's marketing IT. Still
no,
some
no.
level
There's
of
no
IT comes in.
IT. There's no
No.
IT. No IT. There's
Oh,
no
wow.
IT at all. There's
Mhm.
creative team. There's agencies and all. There's no IT at all. That's what the fun part is. Yeah.
But then what you are campaigning all about? Like, what is the product which is
So
getting
they're
campaigned?
different. So it's a bank that I'm working
Uh-huh.
for. So they have different products like, immigrant related products or people who are coming to Canada first time home buyer products, those kind of things. So they have to launch campaigns for these people when they come. So they should be coming to our bank and, taking services from a bank. So how can we get how can we get them already from their home country? How can they start to decide, and how will they get to know about a bank? Because Canada banks are like, some are global, some are restricted to Canada or US itself. So how would
Okay.
you gauge that kind of audience? So creating those
Mhm.
targeted campaigns and incremental campaigns. So people like you're not doing like big bang campaign. You're iteratively building your campaign and then launching the campaign in the end with the target audience, and not like a general message. Like marketing is all about messaging, right? So
Hmm.
Yeah.
if you create one message for everyone, it doesn't work. Everyone has their own set of mindset or set of needs that they are looking for. So how will you, with incrementally, how will you reach out to that audience, create that specific audience campaign? And the testing is your A/B testing. So marketing have A/B testing, split testing. So how will you do those and get your target segmented audience? So it's completely, it's like, you can carry you have an agile marketing manifesto. So it's like, you
Mhm.
So
go with
that means
those.
you all must be using SAS as a tool a lot, because SAS, when I was implementing SAS for some of the banks here in Canada as well as in India, like ICICI Bank,
Mm,
there's something called as, I don't know, years back, okay, they had something called as a campaign management tool.
mhm,
So
Mhm.
based on your requirement and the data that you have, SAS would be able to extract that data list to
mhm.
you. And based on that, you could run your campaign, like whether it's paper or social media or in whatever way you want it.
Yeah, actually right now what I see is the marketing world is more waterfall, and they are trying to
Mm,
go like Pepsi and all these companies,
yeah.
Tesla, and all these companies are doing huge amount of work. Amazon is doing huge amount of work in agile
Mm,
marketing.
of course.
So there's this huge whole new way of launching your campaigns and like collaborating with your sales team and your
Mm,
marketing agencies, and these guys who are definitely working in silos. Like,
Yeah.
they don't in a normal world they don't get together. So how will
mm.
you bring them all together? So it's definitely it's
Yeah,
definitely
good
intriguing.
learning. Yeah, it's good learning and good
Yeah,
experimentation. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right.
All right. Okay, so I think this has been really great, and I think with you, Rituraj, the time just flied. Like I like I can't believe it's been so long already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you, Rituraj. So it was nice having you here, and definitely we ran through a lot of things, and quite a learning experience for people to hear and understand and try to experiment in their work as well. And a lot of insights came out. Hopefully, we should be able to get the hold of that book very soon, sometime. Luckily, if you are lucky enough over here, and definitely, I think I would definitely let people also know that if this is might be the book which has a lot of stuff in it. It is based on scenarios, not Sonora, but definitely those scenarios will are very lively and very
Yeah. Yeah.
the reality part of it. Like this is what will happen, and this is how you could handle it, and that definitely would help. So once again, thank you for sharing on your knowledge with us over on the show, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Rituraj. This has been amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your time also. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.